is foul and foul is fair. However, through the fog and film.
Hi there folks, Laurel here. This is a response video to No Absolute Freedom. It's a video made by Sale Palani, which is linked in the low bar. The video is about street-based sex work and larger communities, specifically in New Zealand. In said video, the claim is made that sex workers' rights activists don't regard the rights of anyone else except for sex workers. Basically, we endorse street prostitution anytime, anywhere, regardless of how it would affect other members of the community. Of course, I can't speak for everyone else, but every sex workers' rights activist that I have spoken with on the subject, including those who are involved in the Canadian Constitutional Challenge, want fair balance for both sex workers and other community members. Most have supported measures such as reasonable bylaws found in New South Wales where a sex worker may not solicit within a certain distance of a place of worship, school, hospital, or residence. I believe the distance is 20 meters. We acknowledge why residents and business owners would be upset by seeing used condoms and needles, or having men who think that they are entitled to catcall and harass women who are walking down the street. These are problems that need to be addressed. In my own work with street-based sex workers, as both an activist and a social worker, I have found that prostitutes that are accepted as members of a community tend to take pride in the community they are working in. They look out for other community members, clean up after themselves, even say hello. However, most outdoor sex workers are met with outright hostility and sometimes violence by community members. There have been meetings that both Amy and I have attended with neighborhood groups that have turned ugly with residents. You would have a handful of residents and business owners that would be happy to have prostitutes in their neighborhoods if the nuisance element was eliminated. These folks would then have to deal with the hostility of other community members who were quite clear that they thought that prostitutes were pieces of shit and it was no loss if they were killed off. We even had a couple of people who thought that Robert Pickton was a hero and he was doing society a favor by killing all those sex workers. As far as the men who harass and catcall, you will find that anywhere, even where there is no hookers to be found. Just walk by a construction site or into a bar or into a mall. Should we start bylining the fuck out of those places based on that reason? The problem is not with the sex workers, but with the men who feel entitled to the bodies of others. It is going to take more than a bylaw or two to fix that. Sale Palani uses a New Zealand governmental report as a source to show that even under decriminalization, non-sex worker community members are taken into account. I would like to thank her for proving a point for me. The model that they have in New Zealand and in New South Wales, Australia, decriminalization, is the legal apparatus that the sex workers' rights movement props up. Sex workers and sex workers' rights activists played a key role in this legislation. They acknowledge that everyone in the community is important. These same statements were used in the current constitutional challenge here in Ontario, as well as a Canada-wide governmental subcommittee hearing that we had here in 2005. This is what the sex workers' rights activists have been saying here in Canada all along, that everyone in the community should be considered. We have been simply trying to get everyone else to acknowledge that sex workers are members of the community as well. Sale Palani also points out that street-based prostitution was seen to have increased in 2 areas in New Zealand since decriminalization. This is based on the governmental report from 2008, which I'll link to in the low bar. She of course forgot to mention that it also decreased in other areas, but we'll let her off for that. Both of the areas that have had increased street prostitution also have some of the strictest zoning bylaws against brothels in the country, making it more difficult for sex workers to move indoors. And perhaps not a coincidence, one of the areas also suffer from, quote, issues stemming from the abuse of alcohol or major problems in the area, as well as other impacts of urban decay and lack of investment, end quote. There are quite a few barriers to getting sex workers to move indoors, including poverty, lack of housing, substance addictions, zoning bylaws, and other things. Decriminalization by its very nature is limited on what it can do to fix this. It is beyond legal matters and moves into the realm of social investment and providing resources. So like I've said many times before, I and other sex workers' rights activists think that this social investment is very important. We should help folks get out of the industry who do not want to be in it, and to avoid unwilling parties to get involved in it to begin with. We also support cracking down on those who exploit children, people who are rapists, and people who are the criminals behind sex slavery. All this bullshit about us supporting trafficking, child porn, or that we're selfish bitches who do not want to pay fair taxes, or in this case that we want to run amok littering the streets with condoms, needles, and providing blowjobs on the corner is just that, bullshit. It is pretty sad that when your opponents have to constantly resort to spreading misinformation and outright lying. Hopefully now it will stop. Anyways, thanks for watching. Sláinte.